Hello, dear friends. Today we have June 19th, Thursday. To hit or not to hit? That's the question that is now worrying. Probably Israel, Iran, the United States, Ukraine, and the rest of the world. I mean the question of whether President Trump will use his super bomb or not, and a lot depends on this. Therefore, now I will give you the results that we have at the moment and explain what it means for Ukraine. And in general, in light of the ongoing military conflict between Israel and Iran, how all this can affect and can continue to affect Ukraine. In general, I'll tell you this. New York Times came out yesterday. A big article on how we came to such a life, or rather, how Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump made up all this. And I must tell you that a day before the release of this article in the New York Times, what I told you is how it really is. Literally 1-to-1, there is one nuance in the newspaper, because the newspaper worked with dozens of sources, including the administration, to write this article. Therefore, there are some very important details that I will now report to you, because this is very important for understanding the essence of the very essence of this moment. So, as we know, even before the New York Times, Bibi and Donnie decided to play a combination. Donnie really wanted to find some other deal with Putin after the failure of the measure regulation. He wanted to do this deal with the Iranians pulled. Donnie was upset, and then Bibi said to him, "Let's start bombing Iran now." "Well, we will bomb it, you will sit and wait, they will come to you and say, we agree to your conditions." That's what they decided. And so the strikes of the Israeli aviation began. The State Department of the United States said that they had nothing to do with it. But we will defend Israel, its sky, territory, when and if Iran answers. Well, it goes on like this. One day, 1.5 days, somewhere on the second, on the third day in the morning. Trump wakes up. First of all, he turns on Fox. The channel is for him probably the only, the most important in any case, source of information, including intelligence. Since he is the director of national intelligence, he deserves it once every 2 weeks, as they write. And here he wakes up the whole night, turns it on in the morning, turns it on, and what does he hear? A brilliant operation of the Israeli Air Force, and amazing effectiveness of the strike on the military objects of Iran. There was no such thing at all. A blitz of Israelis, geniuses of air operations in general, a war of air operations in particular. And then he hears all this from Dona, and he starts to bite something inside. Shining operations, geniuses, this has never happened. No one in the world has seen. And how, where is that Dona, how, glory, here she is next to him, but he is not mentioned. And he also grabs the phone. This is all written by the New York Times. He immediately grabs the phone and starts to call acquaintances, journalists, and hint that he is also involved in this. Well, I don't know, probably not all to a sufficient extent penetrate or trust what he tells. He tells that he organized all this on a large scale. If it wasn't for him, nothing would have happened. Well, and then, to make it completely clear, he goes out with his post on social media and declares, "I said I gave instructions, we, that is, we, Donnie, Macedonian. We closed or not closed, but established control over the sky, over the eastern, that is, western Iran. Then the matter of Iran came to us." Well, and then it happened, as in a fairy tale which at the end of the 19th century was written by Vsevolod Gersh. It is called The Frog Traveler. I will briefly remind you it is worth it, because this is a great comparison. The geese went to the warm land, the frog wanted to fly away with them. But she came up with 2 geese, she says. You take a stick from both sides, and I will clench it with a paste in the middle. And you will fly, and I will cling together with you to the warm land. It is said and done. They flew, and on the spot other birds fly and admire. Bah, what smart geese, how great they came up with it. They are dragging the frog, well done. And the frog starts to disperse from the undeserved insult. It's me, she came up with it, and all the praises of the goose. And the further it goes, the more it grows, and she could not stand it at some point and shouted, "It's me, I came up with it." Well, as you can see, the mouth has opened in the cake. This is how it happened to the Macedonian Don. Well, after that, the question of the bomb arose. Well, since you've already said it all from the very beginning, disavowed your own department and your personal secretary, who now turns out to be a fool. In the Ural, the State Department of the United States is a shame. Now the bomb. Come on, Don, prove that you're really a serious guy, not a frog, a traveler. Well, that's how it happened. Since then, people are worried, first of all in Israel. In Iran, probably. Here, the whole of Washington is in shock. Will they accept the decision to strike this bomb or not? Well, now I'll give you all the results, literally in points, so that the picture is completely clear. He is completely lonely on this issue. He does not know what to do. He does not have smart advisors. And I told you why, who has advisors. In short, he created this situation himself, which he is now in. Special services, there are people there, you know, Tulsi Gabbard, you know what he is worth. But even his special services, somehow it turned out like this. Tulsi Gabbard in March claims on behalf of all the special services of the United States of America that there is no evidence that Iran is creating an atomic bomb. Okay, it was in March of the month, but literally on the days it is reported that somewhere at some meeting, maybe at the Senate hearings. In general, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence last week confirmed the information that Tulsi announced in March. No information. True, here Washington Post says that allegedly at the meeting in Camp David, the director of the CIA, Redcliffe, said that the CIA allegedly has this information. But Redcliffe in general, Tulsi, you know my attitude towards her, attitude, trust, 0. Therefore 0, and then even with a minus, because in the first cadenza of Trump he was appointed to the position of Tulsi. He was there for a few months, Trump himself took it off, he got into the fact that he was sending information to Trump, therefore that Tulsi, that Redcliffe, no trust, there is no support from the Congress. The Congress is silent at all. The main thing is that they are silent like the fish of the Democrats. And I think they are silent not because they are inside the depths of the soul enjoying watching how he is digging his own beep. Dear friends, I apologize, but today we have here a storm raged in the sky. This is the story, therefore there was a technical delay. But this will delay the release of this video. Nevertheless, everything is fine, we continue. This is thunder, everything is fine. So let's go further. Support in the Congress is not among the Democrats, naturally, not even among the Republicans. Trump does not have. Everyone is hiding, because the matter is terrible by and large, in the Pentagon. There is a clone in the Pentagon which Trump appointed there. This is a disgrace. Regularly in Congress, they carry a face-up table. They mock as much as they can. It is difficult to perceive the serious armed forces of the country, which are led by such a creature. Well, Trump gave birth to it in the image of his own. The Allies do not support the use of super bombs. Mob 57. They all insist that the case ends with diplomatic negotiations and regularization of measures. And most importantly, there is no certainty that the use of the HBU-57 bomb will lead to the desired result. Because in combat conditions it has never been tested, and to what extent it will really reach, and what kind of damage it will cause. This is all a highly speculative topic. Trump, with some of his employees or representatives of the Pentagon, consulted him, but they assured him that he was not convinced himself. Right, because he finally understood that everything was up to him. You like to be the great Don McDonald of love and responsibility, but you don't want that. Finally, Russia made a serious warning to the rebels. It was yesterday already. It was stated that the use of the Americans to strike at important objects, such as nuclear objects, it could all end in a nuclear war. And it was followed after an unexpected video by Tulsi Gabbard, about which I told you, which appeared out of nowhere, literally on the eve of the Israeli strike on Iran. We were guessing where the wind was coming from, because when it posted all this on the internet, nothing seemed to predict the danger of nuclear war. And I even had a serious thought that her boyfriends strongly recommended her to take this step. But now, in light of this story with JBU-57 and the necessity of its use, another suspicion arose that Tulsi really made this video with the help of Russians in order to, and this is how Trump perceived it. He perceived that it was against him because there was, remember, I told you, Tulsi's statement that we have war burners among the elite who are trying to strike a wedge or to cause an enemy between nuclear powers. Nuclear powers meaning Russia, strategic allies of Iran, the United States. Here you are, Kazaspeli, I mean. Did Tulsi understand what she's doing literally in a day or two? Before the Israeli strike in the internet, what and from what point does she raise this question? Well, in relation to her, Trump appeared here. So again, Trump created her. If he listened to our channels instead of Fox channel, how many mistakes would he have managed to avoid? Nevertheless, after a telephone conversation with Xi Jinping about the impossibility of taking this strike, JBU-57, Trump warned his guru, his idol, Putin. Well, really, there was nothing wrong with that. But after that, the representative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Zakharev, warned once again to remember here, thought that it was not accidental. Also, Zakharev. Well, and then it turns out, you know how much Trump respects Putin, so much weight on his word, his guru, his idol. And then there is also Xi, and Xi is needed. Recently, those negotiations, in short, Trump wants something clear. He has recently said that he needs a good relationship with Xi, and the blow, it turns out, on Iran with this bomb will not lead to it. That is, no matter where you look, everywhere it is scary. Well, and more problems. There is no certainty that Iran does not have a nuclear warhead in one form or another. Now, in the present time, some mysterious, strange things are happening. So I think it was the day before yesterday, or even yesterday, 3 large transport planes flew out of China and headed towards Iran. On the flight to Iran, the transponders were turned off and the radars disappeared. Apparently, they landed on the territory of Iran, and the final point of their flight was declared, I think, Luxembourg, if I'm not mistaken. But that's how they turned off the transponders, that's how they disappeared. It is assumed that they brought something. The question is what? At the same time, in different Russian channels which are associated with Russian intelligence services, information is given, either in the form of silly jokes or God knows it, about what problems Iran has with nuclear warheads. For 20 million, you can buy a couple of nuclear warheads from North Korea. That is, such an option is taken from Iran. Enriched uranium, which, as I said, according to competent sources, is enough to make a different number of 10 to 15 bombs. And it, on 3 sides of China's transport planes, is delivered ready-made explosive substance or product. All this is stupid, of course, but nevertheless, the Russians deliver these signals, and the Chinese flights were strange. But here you need to keep in mind that the planes could arrive not only to bring something, but also to take it away. Because by analogy, I don't know if you remember or not, but literally the day before, a few days before the beginning of the American operation of the storm in the desert, when from the United States to Iraq, in the end, in 2 weeks, the regime of Saddam Hussein was defeated. So then, in Baghdad, in a few days, Primakov arrived. The future head of the SWR, the future prime minister, the future candidate for the president of the Russian Federation. A man who spent all his professional life connected with the external intelligence of the KGB, then the SWR, and the last 2 years of my career there in the external intelligence. His personal business, the agency, was in my office. So he flew there to be taken away, because he came, spent just a few hours, he met with Saddam, and then literally a convoy of several cars from the Soviet. From the Russian embassy, he left the territory of the Russian embassy, and he headed for the land, the neighboring, I don't remember which country he headed. In general, he went by air. And there was a story that on the way, an American fighter wanted to attack him, and even made the appropriate maneuver, but the attack did not happen. And then in Moscow, they expressed in the appropriate structures, they said that samples or remnants of these vary. That is, traces of work on the weapon of mass destruction, which was not found later. They were not found because it was taken out. God knows how this time I'll just give you facts and what was, and in general in what directions you can think. And you need to think in all directions when it comes to the possibility of Iran's nuclear weapons. That is, no matter what, the question of a terrible blow, the use of this bomb by the United States against Iran, can be considered as the beginning of military actions by the United States of America. According to the Constitution, this is the prerogative of Congress. That is, Bush did it, Trump, well, Congress took off all responsibility for any crime at the time, which can be solved by performing its presidential official functions. But this is not rid of this responsibility. All this mess around him is presidential, which will implement this decision if he takes it. This is to know and understand. In short, the responsibility is colossal, and God knows it. Maybe the next Supreme Court in a new composition will comply with this unconstitutional law and will be imprisoned for this decision. In general, it's a terrible case. He is alone, there is no support from anywhere, there is nothing to rely on. And do you remember the case Taco, Trump always chickens out? That is, the chicken in the end always drifts. And now it appears, after he felt like a hero, played a whole show when he left with G7. He says that he went to settle the issue. He says that he has no idea why Dona left. It's such a great thing that even the settlement between Israel and Iran is a trifle compared to this. He inflated his cheeks, and then there was a formula that acted until this morning that he made a decision, in principle. But he will say this in the very last second before it happens. According to the Bible, probably in Israel, I don't know in what city, probably in Tel Aviv. They hung up a big board where it was written, "Finish this job, Mr. President." That is, we did a lot of work, our VVS, and you must, Mr. President, Trump put a point, you have to strike. I understand how Trump would not want to do this, but so, Mr. Chicken, he... And today, I have already prepared everything. I was ready to sit down. I was sent a newspaper, pro-Republican, New York Post. An article comes out that Trump will announce his decision in 2 weeks. And then my son got angry when I read it to him with an American laugh. Because, well, you remember these 2 weeks when it was about the regulation of the war in the territory of Ukraine, what he promised to do in 2 hours, and then it all poured out. 2 weeks, then 2 more weeks. In short, we now know this is such a compromising tactic of Donald. Trump, when he realized that he was a chicken and had to leave the topic, that's how it happened. So we're supposedly waiting for 2 weeks. What are we waiting for? Let's analyze what he did to himself, not without the help of Bibi, of course. And now let's see what's really going on and what needs to be done mentally, because this is an important question. It is clear to me that what is happening now should end with a situation that will not allow Iran to have nuclear weapons. Iran should not have bombs. It should not have a nuclear program at all. And its military-industrial complex, which manufactures ballistic missiles, drones, and all sorts of other weapons of murder, which it can export to other countries, in particular to Russia, in order to kill people on the territory of Ukraine. All this should be erased. But this needs to be done wisely in order not to make the situation worse than it was before the Israeli Air Force began to strike. Look, I listened. I've been watching 24/7. I follow the smart people. Who says what, with real experience, knows what they say. Here I am talking about the United States, in Europe, in Israel. I watch Israeli television. Wesley Clark is a person who was in charge during the storm in the desert operation. He was the deputy director of the planning committee of the headquarters. That is, he planned the storm in the desert operation. And so he said, in my words, I consider it an honor that a few days before that, I told you that, starting such an operation, you must be 100% sure that it will end successfully, otherwise there can be a catastrophe. Wesley Clark said, before starting a war, you need to know how it will end. If you don't know how it will end, there is no point in starting it. This, by the way, concerns the bomb, and if the results are unknown, if it is not known whether it will solve the task set out, then you need to think of something else. From the point of view of Clark, what needs to be done? The bomb does not solve the issue. There are a lot of reasons I will give you later. I will agree with the Israeli experts, and they will also understand and explain it to you. Wesley Clark says that it is necessary to achieve the goals that I have told you about. I have 100% full agreement and support with him. It is necessary to continue the bombing of the Israeli Air Force operations, and it is necessary to destroy the entire anti-air, anti-missile defense system. All military objects, in fact, are Iran. It is necessary to erase them from the face of the earth. And those objects that are associated with the nuclear program, those that can be destroyed, 100% destroyed by the existing forces and means. I will add to all this, the United States must do what Biden did. How much Biden was said on him, such and such Biden. Biden in October did not chew snot, unlike the great Don McDonald. He drove up the corresponding ships of the Sixth Fleet, in particular from Minsk, closed the sky over Iran, over Israel. And those rockets that flew then, you remember there, in my opinion, I don't remember how many there were, but there they could be counted by fingers, and Israel did not experience such damage as it is now. So it is necessary to close. The Americans must help to close the sky over Israel, put all the necessary ammunition, types of weapons, if such are needed. Provide all the rest of the necessary help, first of all the intelligence, and give Israel's Air Force the opportunity to bring the matter to the end. That is what was written on this blackboard, Mr. President. Finish this job. It is necessary to change the Air Force, the glorious Air Force of Israel. Finish the job that you started. This is how it should be done. Naturally, provide full political support to Israel. Maybe Clark said it. He was supported by others. That is, among those military senior generals who participated in the Beria Desert Operation. Before that, there was a war in the Gulf, who were commanded by the United NATO troops in Europe, in Africa. Then it became the United Commandment. Everyone is like one. They say about the same thing. As for the bomb, well, we don't know. It can't predict. But the thing is scary, because if you use this bomb, screaming, political consequences, it will begin. You will not get into the country here in the United States. Well, the magician says that this will be the end of Trump's presidency. Good or bad is already the 10th thing. That is, here the speech is, by and large, not about Trump personally, but about stability in the country. Therefore, it is necessary to do what they can do exactly and achieve the set goals. Well, look, the last thing, watching or listening to the channels of Israeli television. In particular, I have been watching the 24th channel on a regular basis lately. There are all-knowing people. My attention was attracted to two, or rather, I took two, because they reflected the whole issue. I got the impression that the last day, yesterday already, the Israeli-informed people, they felt that Trump was sinking. That's how he started to say that I made a decision, but I'll tell you when, something in a second, they already understood something on their channels. And here is Professor Meir Litvak, and also this is already on American television, a counselor for national security, Eilat Hewlett. Spoke here, so Litvak is a professor at Tel Aviv University, and he was engaged there in issues of relations with Iran. So he's a really big, serious specialist on this subject. That's what he said in particular, about Ford, the most painful question. Israel does not have a bomb that can reach a depth of 100 meters, which, as he said, is considered to be where this very Ford object is located. Therefore, we were forced to ask the Americans. Maybe the Americans can somehow pull up their artillery, ships, and so on. Maybe they can somehow help us besides this bomb. He says that it is necessary to build the whole operation in such a way that after the war, having the opportunity to fix, to accurately determine, is there still this enriched uranium on the territory of Iran, with the help of which you can quickly make several bombs. Or maybe there is more, and if they have already taken out this uranium, then this is a completely different story, gentlemen. Then the war will end, and all the special services of the world can still for many years, including, first of all, Mossad with their eyes open, run around the world and look for whether this uranium is in the hands of terrorists. Therefore, the most calm way to end the war is to stop these actions on the basis of a certain regulation. To get access to Israel, the United States, the international MAGA-they, to get access to this ford and see if there are still these kilograms that I mentioned in the previous video. If there, thank God, that's it, you can move on. The question is closed. Put it all under control. The question is closed. And in this direction, Mr. Litvak said that after the end of the war, here is the end of the war, where it should be. We must record the absence of an atomic bomb and enriched uranium in the territory of Iran. Otherwise, we will not know if there is an atomic bomb or not. There will be no peace in Israel. It will be allegedly defeated by Ayatollah, who fell, lying on the square. But there will be no peace for the neighbors of Iran. What did the National Security Advisor, Elad Hulatov, say? He was a security advisor, I think, from 1921 to 1923. We received information. He meant Mossad, apparently in general, Israeli Special Services, that Iran took a course on the accelerated creation of an atomic bomb, and we took action to prevent this creation. What does he mean? What did Israel do as a reaction to this threat? We destroyed those people who are connected to this program in Iran. These are scientists. These are military. We destroyed a number of objects that are connected. We destroyed a large number of launchers, rockets, and so on. And this is what we managed to postpone the moment of the possible production of this atomic bomb. Here is the result. It is already there, said Mr. Hewlett. What's next? It is necessary to continue bombing. What can be bombed, destroyed. There are bombs, rockets, and so on in Israel. It is necessary to erase all this from the face of the earth. And then, as he said, a few days, a few weeks on this. And on this it is necessary to turn it all over. Because this business cannot continue endlessly. That's what smart, knowledgeable Israelis say from my point of view. Now I have summed up what we need. I believe from my point of view what we would need, what result in Iran would be good to achieve. First, of course, there should be no nuclear bomb in this regime in Iran. We need to finish, as the professor from Tel Aviv University said. You see, this is a very important thing, he said, because if you bomb, some people write to me, yes, a bomb, bang. Everything will collapse what was there. The main thing is that the entrances and exits will collapse, will be clogged. And that's it, and we will bury it like Chernobyl. We will create such a frame around it. This is not the solution to the question, because the open question remains. Or maybe from there, maybe there is no more of this uranium. Maybe these 3 Chinese planes have already been taken out, and now God knows where this uranium is located. Therefore, it is necessary to check the closure of the nuclear project under control. To do this, you need to destroy this regime, get access to these objects under international control, close it all, make an account and control, and put it above this point. It would be good, of course, to conduct a regime change. They also write to me here, yes, we will conduct it now. It's not that simple, gentlemen. I will give you a little statistic. The population of Israel is approximately 10 million. The population of Iran is about 100 million. The territory of Iran is 75 times larger than the territory of Israel. If the regime is changed, then for several years someone will have to control the territory of Iran, occupy it, keep it under control. This new regime will be held on these rods. I will ask a question, who will do it? Israel will do it, he simply has no power to control this territory. Americans, after Afghanistan, after Iraq, Americans will not do it, I say, definitely. That is, a regime change must take place. The Iranians themselves say, experts, that up to 80% of the Iranian population hates this regime, and they are ready to overthrow it. Ready, maybe, but there is no organized opposition. The first problem is to put the son of the Shah here on the throne, so to speak, to guard. Who will guard him? It is necessary to guard the entire territory of Iran. Therefore, the best way out is natural processes. If this barbaric regime falls in this way as a result of military actions, then it will untie the hands of the internal forces and let them solve this issue. In this way, the corresponding political forces will be formed. Now, how to achieve all this? A bomb, as I am trying to explain to you, I have already mastered it for myself. It will hardly help. According to experts in the United States and those experts that I have brought to you, I consider them real technocrats, real experts, not politicians. They also believe that it will not help. That is, you need to establish whether the fort is enriched with uranium, and if not, then you need to look for where it is. They write to me, raid commandos. Well, what raid commandos? Well, it's not a movie, Schwarzenegger, Terminator, and so on. It would be good, wonderful, a great option for the movie, but in real life it's so hard. Can you imagine how it is all guarded? And in order to get there now, until the armed forces are destroyed, as Wesley Clark suggests, they can get there and then go down to the depth. Well, it's difficult, believe me, it's very difficult. Therefore, we probably put this as the most extremely desperate case. After all, they climb into the Israeli commandos, go down there and carry out inventory, see how much to weigh, how much uranium is enriched, and if it is there at all. No, the only thing they can do is to inject some kind of ammunition there and run away until it all explodes, and then again, under the rubble, what is there, and if there is uranium or there is no uranium. Again, this cursed unknown, as they say in one of the old anecdotes. Therefore, it is necessary to do something like what General Clark said. The Israeli Air Force must, yes, and what did Professor Litvak say? The Israeli Air Force must continue to tighten the launch systems, the places where rockets and drones are produced. That is, Iran must stop its existence as a military power and as a weapon manufacturing center, which is used for killing far beyond Iran. Yes, he does not need this inside Iran. And for this, the Israeli Air Force must continue to carry out its bomb strikes until the leadership of Iran agrees and disagrees. For what? A complete prohibition, not only for the enrichment of military purposes, but also a complete prohibition for the enrichment of uranium. They say they need energy. Okay, the Americans offer. They will make an international consortium in the Middle East, several countries that will be engaged. The Americans will set up the corresponding nuclear reactors, build an atomic power plant, and from there Iran will receive the energy it needs. This is what is now actually on the table of negotiations, but the Iranians do not agree. It is necessary to continue until they agree. Already, today there was a Reuters message. Unofficial negotiations between the American and Iranian sides are underway. The Israeli Air Force, in this case, needs them on the right track. It is necessary to continue this work without hoping for a foreign. Belokurov hero with a Nordic character from Germany, Donald Trump of Macedonia. Because everything will be postponed for 2 weeks and we simply do not have 2 weeks in this situation. I mean, in Israel, probably Ukraine is not there, and in general in the civilized world it is no longer there. So many questions. Now Ukraine in the light of the Iran-Israeli war and the turbulence in the United States of America. In short, a new geopolitical context has emerged. The attention of the world is switched to the Middle East, the war between Israel and Iran. Ukraine is leaving the focus of media attention, but at the same time, it is leaving the focus of criticism. Which is also good given the unfair criticism that has recently been unleashed in its address, first of all, from Washington. Such criticism, which we know these circles in Washington, covered their complete inability to link everything to Ukraine. Next, this is the first, by the way, from Ukraine. The second important factor is the chaos in Washington. Trump administration is disoriented. But the so-called deep state apparatus acts against which those who do not understand that these are wide circles of the American public. For some reason, they did not like this deep state. They voted for Trump, who promised to break it. Thank God that he did not break it. He broke only the top, and now this whole top does not actually work, you see. What is not a crisis, all this top is knocked out because the new top turned out to be like an aristocracy. They work deep state, thank God, these are professionals. Then what else happens? The strengthening of the role of the European Union and Japan. And this is a chance for Ukraine to rely on non-American assistance vectors. Further, I will remind you, this work is carried out in this direction and already gives positive results, good results. The following happens, let's say, an instrumental shift. War turns into a laboratory of technology. Events in both Ukraine and the war of Israel and Iran have shown that drones and artificial intelligence, as one of the analysts said, are practically the currency of the modern war, or the blood of the modern war. And Ukraine is the only state, the only one, where drones of direct vision or direct transmission of information, where such companies as Palantir, Anduril, these are the leaders in this field, the world. Plus, in artificial intelligence, Sterling, however, other companies of artificial intelligence, all this is used systematically. It does not happen in any other state as it does in Ukraine. Israel is very close, but there is only the VVS, a brilliant operation. The ground army, well, Israel does not have such a ground army, a land army, as Ukraine has. If you combine the theoretical VVS of Israel with the land forces of Ukraine, then this army, in case of need, can put under control all of Europe from the Urals to the Atlantic, so to speak. Then, tactical successes are recorded in real time in this completely new atmosphere of the war. Platform partners, that is, those partners who create the platform of this new war of the 21st century. These are volunteers, Helsing, GA, ASI. They are testing now in these wars to some extent what Israel is doing. On the battlefields of Ukraine, they are testing the decision of the next generation in a systematic manner. That is, the armed forces of Ukraine and Israel, they are already in the 21st century like no other armed forces. In this case, we have already talked about Israel, now we will stop only in Ukraine. In this way, all this that I have listed turns the Soviet Union into a strategic army of NATO's de facto, even if the United States slows down support, and in Europe they understand this. This is what already exists. This is what is already in the 21st century. That is, the Soviet Union as a strategic army of NATO is already there. It is necessary to just formalize all this. There are several options. I have been thinking for a long time in my videos. That in the current situation, when the United States, this administration turns its support to Ukraine, making this a huge mistake. That is, it forces Ukraine to switch to a model of a union through technology. That is, it is a union with those states, in front of which there is the most acute issue of security. And they, like the tentacles, are united by these technological companies that he called. They are already transnational, and here Ukraine is part of them. And here it must, through this emerging system now, and replace coal with help from the United States. This is most likely the trend that will take place and develop further in the coming months. Even months, I'm not even talking about years. And in this will participate such companies as Palantir, Anduril, Japan, the European Union, NATO, European countries of NATO, without Washington. In this situation, what are the consequences? Ukraine holds the front, although there is no great euphoria, no great victories, but again, this is the nearest prospect in several months. Ukraine will hold the front. This is not a 100% guarantee, but this is the most likely direction of development of the event. The option is that Trump, yes, at the same time, means that the United States deep state will help Ukraine, first of all, in terms of intelligence information. The second option, the worst option, the United States will swing at Ukraine, completely switch to the Middle East, complete collapse of support. It is considered, as it is said, unlikely, because the allies and the Congress in the end will ensure. And finally, the most desirable option, this is a blow to the Russian Federation through a new combination, that is, relying on this new network, into which Ukraine falls, the preparation of a new blow to the USSR, which will be accompanied by a parallel blow, a sanctioned blow from the European Union. What is expected there? The Congress plus the European Union activate their sanctions, the production of UAVs increases, intelligence is improved, all this is transferred. Without hindrance to Ukraine, which makes it possible to make this blow. It is possible, that is, in the second place, to prevent further events. Some analysts pointed out to me that, paradoxically, what is happening now in Iran may become a consequence of Ukraine's indirect strengthening. What can strengthen Ukraine's position now? The German IHRSD is 3 years old. It seems that there is a 3-year contract. This is the key to the PVO system deep inside the country. Japanese satellite reconnaissance, which seems to be promised, then the brain center of management, which will be created. Well, the only question here is who will create from the Western side. It is clear here that this will be created. These are the companies that I am talking about. That is, this is a volunteer in contact with the general staff of the Soviet Union, most likely. Then the need to create a kind of initiative of stability. Stability of providing Ukraine with everything it needs, with all the necessary support, including financial, political, and so on, and armed, of course. It implies close cooperation of the EU, NATO in this direction, completely bypassing the White House, not paying attention to this. Well, you understand already now, these 2 weeks will be over, then another 2 weeks. Well, to him, to the current resident of the White House, they just stopped taking it seriously. That is what he does, speaks, calls out, well, it's not just a doubt, but a smile on him. Soon they will stop paying attention. And the deep state, thank God, it works. Well, finally, here's the deal that I really count on. We gentlemen, here I look at what is happening here in Washington, then in Iran, in Russia, of course. I said before that I would go to the 6th chamber, which is located in Moscow, and now it is here. 30 minutes drive, a White House. Maybe, thank God, artificial intelligence will arrive on time, because it seems that in the wide political circles of various countries and important countries of the world, natural intelligence somehow cuts or rots or disappears. Thus, while Washington is swaying between, on the one hand, Armageddon, apocalypse, and on the other hand, Gashev, all this together, and all this is interrelated, Kiev, Ukraine, must stand in the center of the new security architecture of Europe, which is being formed. For this, Ukraine has all the necessary things. The most important thing is the possession of the equal forces that it does not have, simply because it is strong, because it does not shoot badly well so abstractly, or there are a lot of drones and so on. And because this is already an army with artificial intelligence, this is already what Russia has always lost from. I have given you examples of the Crimean War, the Japanese War. Russia on the intellectual level now, its army, it is already in order lower than the US. This is what is needed. This is the national treasure that Ukraine has acquired with the blood of the greatest losses in the last 3 years. This needs to be taken care of, multiplied, and with this Ukraine should enter into a new security architecture. That is important in this situation. That is, as one analyst told me, this is the moment of digital Yalta. You remember Yalta, right? Yalta Conference, where the leaders of the 3 states were actually divided into spheres of influence in the world. Now somewhere digital Yalta is taking place. The world is now divided in connection with the artificial possession of artificial intelligence. And Ukraine should take part in this new Yalta not as an object that will be divided, but as a subject, one of the important subjects of this. Also very important, the main thing is not to ask, but you need to build, promote your concepts, and offer a strategic solution.
Не с протянутой рукой, дайте нам то, дайте нам все и так далее. А вот концепция. У нас есть то-то, то-то, то-то. Мы хотим, вот, предлагаем вот такие варианты. Давайте обсуждать. Не просить, а самим
Build a new
формулировать,
security architecture.
предлагать стратегическое решение и строить новую архитектуру безопасности. Ну и,
And
наконец,
finally,
последнее,
the
что
latest
Business
Business
Insider
Insider published the information. I'll just give you a headline.
Заголовок обозначу. Несколько европейских стран, в основном
Several European
восполнили
countries have mainly
пробелы,
replenished the
оставленные
gaps left by the
Соединенными
United
Штатами
States
с
in the help of
помощью Украины. По
Ukraine.
крайней мере, в долларовом выражении.
At least in the dollar
Институт
expression.
мировой экономики
The Kyrgyz
обнаружил,
Institute
что в
of
первые
World
4 месяца
Economics found that in the
2025
first 4 months of the
среднемесячная
25th
сумма
year,
всей
the
помощи
average
Украине
amount of all
увеличилась
aid
там
to
на
Ukraine
24 миллиарда
increased by
евро,
24 billion.
на 2,4
Euros or 2.4 billion euros
по
or
сравнению
$2.7 billion
со
compared to the
среднемесячными
average
показателями
figures
за
for the preceding
предшествующую
part of the
часть
war.
войны.
That is,
То
the
есть
White
Белый
House
дом
turned it all
свернул
over.
это все,
They were in
они
first
были
place.
на первом месте, сейчас
Now European countries have
европейские
fulfilled, in
страны
fact, they have already
восполнили,
fulfilled, this
фактически
is
уже
not a
восполнили, это не
promise.
обещание.
The
Европейский
European
спец
splash. The help of
помощи
Ukraine
Украине
was headed by
возглавили
Great Britain,
Великобритания,
France, the
Франция, страны
countries of
Северной
Northern
Европы,
Europe, the number of
число
which
которых
includes
входит Дания,
Denmark,
Исландия,
Iceland,
Норвегия,
Norway,
Швеция
Sweden,
и
and Finland.
Финляндия.
Well, then
Ну
it
и
is
дальше
written
тут
here how
написано,
much.
сколько То есть процесс
That is, the
пошел,
process has
господа.
begun,
Лед
gentlemen, the
тронулся.
ice has
Это
touched. This
создание
creation
уже
is already a
практически
practical new
новой
architecture
архитектуры
of
безопасности, о
security,
котором
which
я
I am
вам
telling you about.
говорю. Поэтому,
Therefore,
как
as
обычно,
usual,
слава
glory to
Украине,
Ukraine by
вооруженным
the
силам.
armed
Враг будет
forces, the
разбит,
enemy will be
победа будет за
defeated, the
нами.
victory will be
Вам, дорогие
ours. I
друзья,
wish you, dear
выдержки,
friends,
мужества
endurance,
и
courage, and
твердой
firm
веры
faith
в
in our
нашу
inevitable
неизбежную
victory.
победу.
See you
До
soon.
новых скорых встреч.